Yes, sir. We got the Major League Draft. 2024 draft is in the books, and we're here to talk about it here on Hitting with Holly with Todd Hollandsworth, Joe Frisaro here on our Hitting It with Holly on Man on Second Baseball. And Holly, fascinating. We're going to kind of tackle the draft from a lot of different angles. We'll start off a little bit with our South Florida angle because a lot of the players that we're familiar with, high school. We're going to really kind of stay in the high school lane for most of the
Sure.
podcast. But we had some kids down here that from South Florida that were drafted. Interesting situations. I'm going to kind of delve into them. I think we had 5 in all, 2 in the first 10 rounds, and then 3 from the 11th round up. And we're going to kind of break it down because of the slotting system. Those guys from 11 to 20 are a little bit more tricky to sign. But with that, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Great week so far. Obviously watching the home run derby, which was a lot of fun. The All-Star game, which was pretty exciting, but kind of typical, Major League Baseball, right? Kind of close, a lot of, angles early in the game, and then just lockdown relievers coming into ball games and just shutting the door down and, making these games so much shorter. That's kind of what we were always talking about. I kind of remember thinking back to, how the All-Star game kind of reminded me as the transition through my generation of, how to, manage a game towards the end and, just bringing in power arms and lining up those power arms. I think back to like Tony La Russa and, just bullpen structure and, the lefty on lefty matchups and all the things that kind of go into just shortening a game. And, for fans out there, if you want to know what shortening a game is, that's kind of what it is. It's, you better get that starter, get as much as you can get and hopefully get yourself that lead. And then you're ultimately turning things over to the bullpen. And we kind of watch that play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing too, Holly, with those power arms, there are also a lot of quick outs because a lot of the hitters late they may only have one pitch. They didn't want to get 0-1, and it's certainly not 0-2.
Right.
So a lot of first, second pitch outs. If they didn't get a hit on the ball, next thing
Well,
you know,
yeah.
they got 9-10 pitch inning with 2 punch outs.
Let me give you a quick story because I think you'll love it. Because as I just mentioned, I was kind of part of the transition. I'm not, just kind of how bullpens were constructed and how managers were really and organizations were really focusing on lefty matchups, power arms, and of course you had the ability to use your bullpen any way you wanted. There were no stipulations when all of this kind of really started. And, I remember when I first got to the big leagues with Tommy Lasorda, like we've heard this a million times and you do still hear it in high school, which I do think it's kind of great. You probably should still implement it in high school, which is right. You're down by a run in the last inning and you tell all your hitters, take a pitch. And it was funny because I heard that so many times. I mean, like that became the ninth inning philosophy, almost like you didn't have to hear it, like take a pitch, like all of a sudden this guy was going to, start walking the building. Of course, we see that certainly in lower levels, but at the major league level, to your point, we're talking about guys throwing 103 miles an hour, guys who just fill it up in the strike zone, guys who don't walk hitters. And it's like, the one thing that has stayed true through the conversation is many times the best pitch you're going to get is going to be in the first 2 pitches. It's going to be something that's a little bit more over the plate as the pitcher's trying to get ahead in the count. And then, of course, he's going to try to really work the corners, even with high velocity. But that mindset, and I remember the transition because, of course, I was with Tommy for 2 years. And the first year was like, every time, take a pitch, ninth inning, you got to take a pitch. We'll see if this guy's going to walk the house. And, of course, very rarely did it ever work. And I remember the transition the following year was, we're not taking any more pitches off these guys. These guys are throwing so many strikes, and the best pitches we're getting to hit are early. So if we're going to go down and this dude only throws 7 pitches, I want you guys going up there swinging the bat. So it was almost like in 1 year, there was this incredible transition to what you just described. Why are we looking for 93-mile-an-hour sliders and 0-2 counts when we may get a 105-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle on the first pitch of the at-bat? I'm going to take my chances on that pitch. I'm not going to take my chances on the nasty.
Yeah. And a couple of players that could be there in the future are some of the players we're going to talk about too now. As they had the draft for refresher for the fans, that MLB has kind of just folded it all in under one tent, and that happened to be in Arlington and in Texas at Globe Life Field, home of the Rangers, where they had the home run derby, as Holly said. They had the futures game on Saturday. They even moved that a day ahead. Home run derby Monday and All-Star game Tuesday. But the draft went Sunday through Tuesday, and here in South Florida specifically, we had an interesting on day 2 in the 3rd round. A team that used to play for Holly, the Chicago Cubs, took one of our guys, and one of my sleeper guys. We had talked about him before, Ronnie Cruz of Miami Christian High School, really shot up draft boards. This guy wasn't even in, and my buddies over there, Jonathan Mayo and Jim Cows, do a great job at MLB Pipeline trying to put everybody in under one umbrella there with over 200, their top 200 or top 250, whatever it was. Ronnie Cruz not among them. And he went 90th overall to the Cubs. And he really kind of showed out at the combine. He also had a really good year, really showed out in the state playoffs. His team lost in the state finals, but spectacular defense, very athletic. And I remember I was doing some freelance stuff for the Miami Herald at the combine, and Andre Fernandez, good friend of ours, media guy, and Andre, I text him because I'm watching Ronnie's BP. And you don't know when you see him play in a high school game against American Heritage or whomever. He hits the ball almost 108 at 107.9 for a shortstop, and it flashed up on the scoreboard, and he hit it into like the right center gap. And I texted Andre. I said, Ronnie's getting drafted. Because he was a Miami-Dade kid. He was among the least hype players that we had. I'm like, if he's already doing that, he's getting drafted. He was invited here. This kid's getting drafted. And then, so congratulations to Ronnie. And then congratulations to Devin Fitzgerald, switch hitting shortstop, son of Todd Fitzgerald, Stoneman Douglas High School. All this kid has done is win. Holly, as you know, Douglas, I think in his 4 years, 4-year starter, 4 state titles, 3 national titles. I don't even think won well over 100 games, and I don't even think they lost 10. And so great for Devin. Devin went in the last pick of the 5th round. Texas Rangers took him. And from my understanding, it's a well above the slot, bonus he's going to get. He has an NC State commit, but look for Devin to sign with the Texas Rangers once all the negotiations, physicals, and all that goes. So it looks like we got 2 players. We'll talk about some of the players who didn't get drafted and why, but just kind of your thoughts on players getting taken on day 2, what their mind should be thinking as they, and what stood out for these players in your mind as well. And what do you think is the reason why they were drafted where they were?
Well, and I think you make a great point. You used the word right away, Joe, athleticism. I think of both of them. Both are tremendous athletes. And that's always a key ingredient when you start looking at draft boards and you start looking at where guys slot. I mean, I'm not really talking about the pitchers here. I'm more talking about the players, obviously. And, when you kind of get into who they are and what they are, you look at Fitzgerald, he's coming from a fantastic program. He's coming from a winning culture. So there's some level of expectation that does matter. You want players that come from winning cultures who know how to win, who know how to, play the team game. I mean, this isn't just always about individuals, but I love both of these players. They're both incredibly good athletes. I've had the ability, the privilege really of watching both of them here in South Florida, and both of them are that very, very impressive. Played Stoneman Douglas a number of times and got to see him over the last couple of years develop. And that's the key. I mean, I think that every fan that watches the draft, you have to remember this. There is, at the very beginning of the draft, you're going to see, incredible talent, incredible athleticism, and incredible ability, but the impact is more predictable. And that's ultimately what these teams are searching for. And that's the hardest thing in all of baseball. This draft is very unpredictable because, again, we identify and recognize tools of the trade. Not only that, but the ability to improve those tools of the trade. And then the one I always talk about is the character and the DNA of the player himself and the willingness to kind of get better at everything that you do. But fans need to understand this. I mean, we love the signing bonuses. We love to see these kids, live out their dreams and get this incredible opportunity. But that is just it. I learned this as quick as anybody. This is the first step of the journey. It's like the first 18 years for these kids. It's like you've been putting in the work, you've been putting in the time, you've been putting in the effort, you've been harnessing your athleticism, you've been learning the game, you've been playing it at a high level, and certainly you caught everybody's attention. But now the journey begins. It's almost like the journey to begin the journey, and that's kind of where you're at with a lot of these guys. And so, what they're both going to realize is that they're going to get into a couple of systems here where they are going to be in somebody else's body, so to speak. That's kind of the way I always looked at it. you're going to get into a room, you're going to get into minor league camp, and you're going to realize there's a lot of me in this room. There's a lot of guys who have the exact same abilities as I do. So what are going to be the key things that I can do to differentiate myself from everybody else? The guys at the top of the draft board, they get way more benefit of the doubt. They're going to get opportunity because they're going to get more money. It's plain and simple. It's a business. It's how it works. Yeah. But the guys who go in those middle rounds, they're going to be extended an opportunity, and you're going to be the guy, for a year, because the draft is obviously only 1 year. But remember, your organization is going to go through this exact same process a year from now, and they're going to look for players just like you. So that's what you have to remember. So now you're in the bowl. You've gotten yourself into the bowl, and you're like, all right, how do I get myself up to the top of this bowl? How do I keep myself on everybody's radar? And listen, there's things that I certainly identified with, obviously keeping yourself on the field, staying healthy, avoiding injury, doing all of those things. And most importantly, performing. I mean, those are always keys to climbing the ranks through the minor leagues and getting yourself that opportunity at the major league level. So the journey for these kids is just beginning. We're so proud of them because we know that they put in the time and effort behind the scenes on the field, have caught the attention of people around, even went higher than a lot of people probably thought that they were going to go. But this is the first step of the journey. So we're excited for them. We're praying for them. We hope that everything starts to really work in their favor, but that they can do those things that I just mentioned. They are such key ingredients. I'm not even sure players really truly realize, because we used to have this saying, out of sight, out of mind, and you kind of see it happening year in and year out. And what I mean by that is you've got to keep yourself on everybody's radar. You've got to continue to play well. You've got to continue to stay healthy and stay on the field. And that's going to be the things that are going to continue your journey moving forward, because the minute you kind of have to take a stop or a stopgap or an injury, or you lose a season, you kind of fall back just a little bit, or you can look at it like players start to catch up to you. So that pool starts to get a little bit bigger again.
Yeah, and those players, obviously, congratulations to them. They're also a big part of this channel. Lots of highlights of Ronnie Cruz and Devin Fitzgerald and others on our channel as we're growing forward. And Holly, you kind of said it well about their journey. We're proud of them. They represent our area of the state and country, and so we obviously have a bias and a passion for the South Florida kids, especially. Sure. But we had 3 that were at the combine that it didn't pan out in terms of getting selected, and their reasons. And it doesn't mean they weren't draftable. And we're going to talk about 2 position players, 2 from and 1 pitcher. From Westminster Christian, you had pitcher Laz Calero and shortstop Manny Marin. Laz, from what the Miami Herald reported, was seeking about $1.2 million in bonus. Wasn't there for him. He didn't really have the breakout senior year, although all the tools are there. Just a really good-looking pitcher. He's got the size, but it just didn't work out where a team gave him that. Manny's going to go to Tennessee. He's another guy. If he didn't have a certain dollar figure or wasn't in that first 2 or so rounds, kid's a super talented player. He's going to go to defending national champs Tennessee next year. And a really player I really root hard for as well from Doral Academy, Michael Torres. We talked about him before, outfielder, and he is going to go to the University of Miami. From what the Herald report, I think he was looking for about $800,000. He was getting calls about the 4th round. No one was going to go there. So instead of taking less than what he had his sights on, he will go to a great program in UM. And all 3 of these guys have a shot at being either first or second rounders as soon as they become draft eligible again in a couple of years. Just kind of your thoughts on if the players that it didn't pan out, Holly, and are going to go the college route, but we're certainly going to see them in the near future.
Well, listen, and I think in each of these situations, we on the outside, obviously, watching them and watching their careers, and I'm sure they're being advised by their parents and certainly probably some people around them. I mean, those things certainly ultimately matter. Most of us have to remember that these are business decisions that these players ultimately make. It's just like everything that I told you about the players who did get drafted and we believe are obviously going to go on into their professional career, so to speak, not the college career. They're going to enter the professional ranks. The journey doesn't change. That's the thing. And really what we need to understand is, having lived this, that you're betting on yourself. I mean, those are the things. I mean, when I came out all the way back in the early 90s, it was the same decision that you were making. It was like, I know that I can play this game at a high level, but I got a lot to learn. And how am I going to learn it? Is it better for me to learn it in the minor leagues and go that route? Or is it better for me to go to college, which, you've got the opportunity to go to college and continue your career that way? you're still betting on yourself in each of those situations. And that's the one thing that you start to identify. Again, none of these players really, when you think about it, even all the way up to your 1-1s, have life-changing money in the sense that their life is set forever and they don't have to, figure things out. You still do. And that's the reality. Yeah, those bonuses are nice, after the taxes get you and everything else. You realize, okay, I've got a good start to life. I've been blessed. Things are moving in my direction. But the details of everything that I just described, they don't change. You're still betting on yourself to be better than that room full of, incredible athletes, that room full of incredible players, whether it's at college or whether it's in the minor leagues. And you're going to have to, truly excel. Baseball is one of the most unique sports. And it's one of the things that I kind of loved and didn't always love, that you start to realize. And of course, I went the high school route. I left high school and I went into, professional baseball with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Some of my best friends were other outfielders in the organization, but I'm competing against them every day. And that's the reality of what you're doing. I mean, you have to continue to put yourself at the front of the line. And I'm not saying this selfishly, I'm just saying by your performance. And you have to go out there and continue to perform, keep your name relevant, keep your name at the front of everybody's conversation, and continue to do what you're doing. So whether you're an A-ball or you're at Tennessee, you're still doing the same thing. The journey's just a little bit different. One thing leads to another. Business decisions are made. But the idea for that particular player, those goals, those self-driven, self-motivated goals that you create inside yourself, the dream doesn't change. They're all saying the same thing. I plan on being in the big leagues one day. It's just sometimes the journey's a little bit different for each of them.
Yeah, and they'll all get compensated one way or another with NIL deals, whether they feel that they would match that. And
which I don't even consider anymore. I totally forget that, but you're absolutely right about that.
So they do have some leverage there. And now these three that were drafted in a little bit different situation, Holly, and I want to tackle each one of them. And a very fascinating, these decisions coming up. Edgar Colon from Felix Varela High in Miami. He was taken in the 11th round by the Cincinnati Reds, Miami commit. And I saw Colon pitch one time against West Broward. And Holly, this kid carried as many scouts as anybody I covered. He had about 15 scouts there. And he just looks the part. He throws 94, right. Really good. It's not completely, finished product there, but a lot to like. And if you're just looking at the talent rather than the results, because it doesn't always, the numbers you'll see on Max Prep don't always completely tell the story, although he had good numbers. But I find that the Reds, I think, are a good pitching organization. I think he's a Miami commit, but I think he's going to sign. I think they probably had a pretty good indication. Then in the 16th round, another Stoneman Douglas player, Jaden Dubanowitz, Doobie as we call him, because Dubanowitz is a lot harder to say. Florida commit, very well battle tested. Pitched to state finals, the starter in the game in state finals for Douglas. I thought he was already up in Gainesville. So he was taken by the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll see if that gets done. And then in the 17th round, a guy I root really hard for, Lucas Ramirez, son of Manny Ramirez, who is an American Heritage, one of my favorites around. I really believe in this kid. His numbers didn't, in terms of, if you just looked at the stats, it wasn't like, batting 500 and like what you see. But this kid's got a world of talent, taken in the 17th round by the Los Angeles Angels. Tennessee commit if he doesn't sign. And, their path, now I've got to read this because I'm not good at math, but the way you sign these guys, the first 10 rounds, that's where your bonus money goes. So, but after that, clubs that outspend their allotment, and this is courtesy of MLB.com, that outspend their allotment by 0 to 5%, pay a 75% tax on overage. So my understanding is, let's say Ramirez in the 17th round and Doobie in the 16th round, depending on how the rest of it, and I didn't break down how their drafts look, but they could probably each get 200 to maybe 300. It'd be a stretch from people I respect to get more than $500,000. But if you sign for like 400,000, let's say, that's essentially between 300 and 400,000. That's essentially the 5th round slot. So it'd be interesting if these two players can be in that neighborhood which would get them to say, hey, look, would I have been happy with a 5th-round slot? Or do I want to go to UT? Do I want to go to UF and follow it there? So it's going to be a fascinating thing. They have leverage because they have the college commit. But are the teams that took them, or did they want them enough? Because in my opinion, both could be steals, for 16th and 17th rounders.
No, they're great. Those are great points, Joe. And the one thing that I'll add to this, and I kind of just said it, and my mind kind of wanders right back to it. You're not at life-changing money yet. That's the thing. I mean, we can talk at the top of the draft, 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. I mean, you're talking guys that are getting millions and millions of dollars. At the same time, you're 18 to 21 years old, and you've got a lot of life to live. And so your advisors are very vital in these situations when you start making these decisions, because these are the decisions, Joe, that you're talking about to me that are the ones that are probably a little bit tougher to make, because you identify, listen, $500,000, that's a lot of money, but again, it's not life-changing money. I mean, it may change your life in the short term, and maybe over the next few years, you can live comfortably, but you've got to realize that, you're getting into a sport and you're dedicating your life to a sport that you've got to chase down and that you've got to pursue. It's got to pay off. I mean, that's the ultimate goal is to get to the big leagues and make money, over, year over year. And so that's the idea. And so, when you look at these decisions, and I think these are the ones that are a little bit tougher to make, you have to say to yourself, can I go to, a top-notch institution that gets lots, like the SEC, for example? Of course, just about every school in the SEC gets primetime television attention. You've got the deals that you can make where you're making money in college, and you can still carry your resume, through that, and obviously go out and put up big numbers and still continue to catch everybody's attention. At the same time, are you the type of person that says to yourself, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm made of, and I'm ready to, start my journey? I don't, college might be, I remember thinking it myself. I felt like college was going to be a waste of my time. All college was going to do to me was probably set me up to maybe make some bad decisions. And, I knew what I wanted to do in my heart, which was play Major League Baseball. So, the Dodgers probably would have appreciated knowing this at the time, but they could have given me $5. I was going, that's where I was at. And of course, I went higher than that, but that was my dream. And that's the certainty that I live within myself. But that being said, I'm not sure everybody, shares that same opinion. Again, that's just me. So, you have to weigh these things out. You mentioned, the Cincinnati Reds being maybe a nice fit. Those things absolutely matter. When I got drafted by the Dodgers, the one thing that was so important, in my mind was like, they know how to develop rookies of the year. They know how to develop young guys. This is what they're known for. I'm in. I remember guys telling me back in the day, and of course, in 1996, I was the National League Rookie of the Year. And of course, Derek Jeter was the American League Rookie of the Year. But I always remember guys coming through the minor league system, talking about, their draft teams and teams that they were on and, in different places, and opportunities being different for different guys. Organizations have different philosophies. And what I mean by that is, if you go to the Minnesota Twins, and the Minnesota Twins have 3 tremendous shortstop prospects coming up, and you make 4, is that still a good fit for you? In your mind, is that something that you're going to be up to that challenge? And you're like, all right, I'm going to go out and play. I'm going to go outplay. They've already got 2 or 3 top 100 prospects who are middle infielders, and I'm a middle infielder. Am I just another number, in their system, or are they putting an emphasis on who I am and what I am? I mean, they're always going to say the right things to you when you get drafted. They're going to say, we love you, we want you. But at the same time, you also have to identify, and that's where your representatives matter so much, what's actually going on inside that organization. Opportunity is huge. When you're getting drafted, it almost works backwards in a lot of ways. You want to go to the organization that on the major league field probably presents you the most opportunity to get on that field. So kind of what I was saying, like about Derek, what Derek did was he busted down the door in an organization where doors weren't busted down. I have many friends who were general managers in the sport that have told me many times, we draft guys to trade them. They're trade chips. We're going to use free agency. Yeah. We're going to go out and get guys who are proven. We have the assets and the ability to make our decisions on a higher level with bigger dollar amounts. And that still rings true today. You have to remember what organization is really in a position to say, okay, we're going to give this guy every benefit of the doubt. We're going to push him hard. We're going to develop him, and we're going to get him to the big leagues. Are you as certain of that in every organization? I would imagine that your answer is probably going to be different depending on where you go. So all of those things matter. The Cincinnati Reds, certainly, they seem like they're an organization that is absolutely investing in their younger players and want to continue to push their younger players and control, because you've got those years of control. But not every organization shares that philosophy.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's where it gets to fade. I wonder, Holly, too, would it matter a little bit with a pitcher out of you can look at it and Doobie, I get, like you say, he goes back to betting on yourself, and I'm sure he feels he could go in as a freshman and be a really impactful player at UF. But UF's pretty high goal, that's right. National championship sites and so forth. And do you, especially if you dealt with any arm discomfort, and you weren't necessarily a Paul Skeens, do you sit around and go, maybe if 300 will get it done, and maybe I'll just start my pro journey right now?
It's great. I mean, but that's where you start to, you have to understand what's going on behind the scenes with each and every one of these kids that gets drafted and each and every individual, because the story and the journey is different for all of them. And you're 100% right, Joe. I mean, that's just it. We'd love to believe that, and this is what I think it's so interesting because the game has changed so much. But when I was coming up, guys wanted to be starters because that's where you really got paid. But it also required 180 innings every year. So you had to be a guy who not only was going to maintain health, but go out and maintain performance each and every year. And then, of course, you were holding out for, as you got yourself to the big leagues, if you could do that, a big payday. That's really where the big payday rested. It's different now. But at the same time, you still have to view what you are, what you're capable of doing, and can you keep yourself healthy? I mean, it is so important. I mean, I think baseball really has kind of just accepted the fact that most kids are going to go through some sort of arm injury or a Tommy John or something at some point in their career, and the organization's ultimately going to have to deal with it. But the truth of the matter is the player knows this better than we do. And that's the reality. Pitchers, you got to know how you feel each and every day. I mean, you got to feel like, hey, I just came out of, I threw 60 high school innings this year. I started the season, I was throwing 95. I ended at 60. I'm throwing 92, 93. Is there a drop in velocity? What's your makeup? What's your work ethic? How invested are you? I mean, that's really the ringing question. I believe, whether it's players or pitchers, is how invested are you? And so, you cannot look at the draft and say, I mean, again, unless you're really at the top of it, this is life-changing money. So the decision has to be made more specifically towards what you think you're going to be, not only this year, what you're going to be in the next 3 years and then the next 5 years, and what you believe your journey ultimately to be and what you want your journey to be. That's vital. You got to know what you want and then go for it. And that's just it. As a player, it's probably a lot easier to say, okay, listen, I'm ready to jump in, put a wood bat in my hand, and I'm ready to go to the minor leagues. I think where the pitchers, they do understand this, that, college can absolutely be that journey. It may not change, my trajectory as far as where I'm going. Of course, they want to get themselves to the big leagues, but it might actually be a little bit easier, to go through the college ranks than it would be to jump into the minor league system and go that route. But each player knows better than we do.
Yeah, I need to clarify. Doobie is with the Brewers. Edgar Caglianone was with the Reds. So right. I think I switched them up there. But still, the same thing applies, and the Brewers do a great job with pitching as well. Right. I want to talk about a kid from Florida who, a college guy, I think you've probably seen him play because I know you watch a good bit of college baseball as well. From the Gators, interesting guy, Jac Caglianone. Is this the next Ohtani?
Well, and again, that really is a tough question for me to answer because I don't know him personally, but of course, here in Florida, we know of him and we certainly know what he can do. And if you watch him swing a bat, this guy's a game changer. So that's where his value excuse me, that's where his value rests. He's the type of guy that can swing a bat. Now, I don't remember how much he pitched this year. In fact, I'm not even sure he did pitch this year. Did he pitch this year, Joe? Do you know that better than I do? I
don't know. I mean, I know he throws like 100.
Right. I don't remember seeing him. I remember seeing him last year pitch a little bit more. Of course, my eyes are always, attracted to the bat. And I certainly know what this man can do. I mean, he's got excuse me power, as we like to call it, which means he doesn't have to square it up every time to drive the ball over the fence. I mean, he's hit some of the longest home runs that we've seen in college baseball. This young man seems like he's everything. Could he be? It's a tough question for me to answer. Only he knows that destination. But, the best person to probably ask that is somebody like an Ohtani who knows the journey. And that's the thing, balancing the two. The bat plays. We know that already. So he's in. But can he continue to bring him into your organization and say, okay, listen, maybe we're going to put a higher emphasis on the bat and a little less emphasis on the arm or the pitching side of it. I think that's ultimately what you have to measure. And when you look at the situation, what is the organization hoping for? And are they kind of welcoming you in with this open arms approach of, listen, you're getting, next year you're going to get 500 at bats somewhere in the minor leagues, or wherever, maybe they accelerate them, but you're playing every day. How does that incorporate into us developing you as a pitcher and getting that kind of knocked out as well, knowing that we can find a slot for you? Both pay really, really well if you're going to be, if we're talking the top echelon of hitters and players. And so we know that certain players, Mike Trouts of the world and the likes, those guys are going to get paid incredible sums of money for being the game's best hitters. At the same time, we know the same can be said for the pitching side of this. How do you merge that combination conversation where you have a player where I think there's just a little bit, where one side's a little bit more advanced than the other? And it's not that he doesn't have the arm, and it's not that he doesn't have the velocity, but there's just, you feel like there's probably a few more steps on the pitching side of the journey than there is on the bat side of the journey. Because remember this, Ohtani was almost a slam dunk the minute we were introduced to him, right? The minute we saw him, we knew that the bat played and we knew that the arm played. We knew that he knew how to do both at an incredibly high level, and it always had been doing that. So it was almost as if he was checking off boxes for everybody pretty quickly. This is a unique situation, at least in my opinion, where you have a player who certainly has the potential, but I feel like the potential probably applies to the pitching a lot more than the certainty that you have in the bat. Right. So it is going to take some level of, obviously communication, discernment, not only on the player's part, but on the organization's part on how they choose to develop it. Because to your point, could he be the next Ohtani? He absolutely could. But you got to pick up the one side a little bit more than this side, because this side's way up here, and I feel like this side's just like kind of like a little bit lower, and so you got to get it to where it's moving in the same way.
Yeah. So Kansas City took Caglianone in the 5th or 6th pick overall. Interesting, and this is from. And the things that stand out, obviously, the physical size, like Ohtani's a big man, and and Jac is as well. The durability aspect of it. You noted the easy power. I personally think this draft will be remembered by him. I know other guys were drafted higher than him, but he's the guy I look at as this guy's probably the best player in the draft. Obviously, the teams with 1, 2, and 3, and 4 took another way. But this is something I want to get your hitting expertise on this, because I heard them talking about it, the knock on Jac, and I get it. It's like when you're picking at the top, you're looking for the holes, you're looking for whatever. Everyone's great, everyone's got talent, but they picked on the chase rate, and I guess his chase rate in 23 was 44%. And in 39, and it dropped to 39% in 24. League average is 28%. I get it. I think that's a splitting hairs more, because the guy batted .411 this year with 23 strikeouts and 48 walks. So I mean, so what if he's swinging at strike one out of the zone because he's looking to do damage early in the count. And I'm not saying that's the reason. And last year he struck out 58 times and walked 17. But I know that this is where the analytics come in. And I'm going to mention a quick little anecdote. Our old friend Marcell Ozuna, and you remember Ozo when he was breaking in with the Marlins, he chased everything. But what Ozo didn't do was swing and miss in the zone. He had fastballs in the zone. He had breaking balls in the zone. So once they got the ridiculous chase out of him, he becomes a 40 homer guy, a multiple All-Star, 120, 30 RBI guy. Are they dinging Jack a little too much for a chase rate metric at the college level? Or do your eyes say, talent, stupid, this is what it looks like?
Yeah, number two, that's absolute nonsense to me. I think it's absolutely preposterous. I think that the eye test, he passes on everything. There was an old saying, and it certainly holds true today, which I'll throw it out. I remember when I got to go to the Dominican Republic for the very first time as a young minor leaguer and playing international baseball. There was a mindset amongst the hitters over there that I hadn't really heard. And of course, again, I'm talking a long time ago, but it still rings true today. Hitters understood that they had to hit to get to where they wanted to go. They weren't going to. The old phrase was, "You can't walk off the island." And the idea is to impress everybody with your ability to swing the bat. You can teach a hitter how to slow down, to understand hitting, maybe let the ball get a little bit deeper, understand the situations that you're in to where that chase rate starts to work, starts to work in your favor. But as far as I'm concerned, what I'm saying right now is that's absolute nonsense. I would much rather see a kid his age ready to swing the bat from the minute he gets into the on-deck circle to the minute his at-bat's over, knowing that he believes in himself, that he can do damage at the top of the strike zone, the bottom of the strike zone, 2 pitches on the outside part of the plate. He knows how he's being approached. He knew how he was being approached in college. He hit well over 400. What does that ultimately tell you? They're not going to he wasn't just going to work on pitches down the middle of the plate. Every time he steps into the box, he understands that he's going to get pitched very carefully. And what he actually did was he knew that his impact wasn't going to just be walking down to first base, but I have the ability. I'm so talented, and I've seen this at the major league level with some incredible hitters, some Hall of Famers and the likes. Guys can take pitches outside the strike zone and do significant damage. We see it all the time. And I would rather a player find that out about himself than to prove through the rules of analytics that he's got great strike zone discipline. That certainly applies at the highest level. I absolutely get it. But you're talking about a kid in college right now. Swing the bat. Go out there and find out what you can do. I remember the first time that I took a 96-mile-an-hour fastball at the very top of the strike zone. In fact, it was above the strike zone. I was just feeling good that day, and I couldn't do it consistently. But, I hit a long home run to right, and I was like, I was looking fastball. I was feeling good, and this breaks all the rules. You still hit a home run around the bases. You see what I'm saying? It's like that's the game that we play. That's the game that we love. That's the game. These are the players that you fall in love with, are the guys who can be game changers that aren't being pigeonholed, so to speak, with the idea of never breaking the rules of hitting. We've created so many rules for these kids that they're trying to abide by them. They're not developing and understanding their own excellence and the things that they can capably do. I can show you a lot of kids that can turn around 92 to 94 miles an hour in high school on a ball right down the middle of the plate. Show me the guy that can take a thigh-high fastball on the outer third and drive it over the left field wall from a left-handed hitter. See what I'm saying? It's like you start to understand I can do a lot more things inside the strike zone than what the analytics are always going to tell you. At the bottom line is the numbers are going to tell you something, and what our eyes tell us is going to be way more valuable than what those numbers do. Those numbers are important. Don't get me wrong. This isn't me going off on analytics. They're value. They show us areas of improvement, areas that we can work on, but they shouldn't define the player. They shouldn't define who he is. I've watched so many guys. You used Marcell Ozuna. as a great example, I watched a lot of guys who came up to the big leagues, proved that they could be great big league hitters, and as their careers continued to develop, got more and more patient, and then they understood how this works even better, and those numbers would move forward. The swing rate would come down, the walk rate would go up, and the home runs and the RBIs and the production all stayed the same or even got better. But that's the thing. I would never, ever tell a young kid you got to be more patient up there. There's a time and a place for this. I'm not talking about swinging at balls at 50-foot curveballs, but what we're talking about is the shape of the strike zone and just around the shape of the strike zone. So this is a young man who's got just unlimited potential. To me personally, the numbers that you just read me aren't numbers that I would see as bad. I actually see them as numbers that are good. That's a guy that would be playing for me every day. You gave me that number, the swing rate's high. That's what I want. I want a high swing rate. I want a guy who I can put in the middle of my lineup or at the front of my lineup that is going to go up there with the mindset that I'm getting up there to do damage each and every time I have a bat in my hand.
Well, he's one of those players that your good friend Dan O'Dowd refers to as an aircraft carrier. He's that aircraft, and guys like that. You're right. I don't want him sitting there just nibbling and chirping at the umpire that was this much outside or not. When this guy, you see the easiest power, like you said, the highlights of him were he wasn't just hitting it over the batter's eye. He was hitting it like in the next county.
That's right.
It was like, are you kidding me? No, I let that guy develop as he develops, and the other guys can catch up.
Is Vladimir Guerrero in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I guess he wouldn't be these days. Again, Vladdy had a lineup.
Vladdy was lighting pitches that bounced.
Exactly.
In the right field for base hit. So, I mean, you can say what you want. We knew those were the guys those were the guys in the lineup on the other team that you were so worried about more times than not, Joe. And here, this is probably the best way to make my argument, and I'll do it in a much shorter version this time. The person who had the tremendous discipline, the guy that was going to go in there and say, okay, I'm only going to play by my set of rules. I'm working towards my pitch. Of course, all of these things matter. I'm not endorsing just going up there and swinging. Remember, we're talking about really, really talented players here. So we're in a little bit of a different conversation. This isn't me telling 8-year-olds to just swing at everything the pitcher throws. So we're clear. But my point is this. When Vladdy came to the plate, we always knew that unless you literally intentionally walked him, there was always a chance that he was going to do damage, especially late in the ball game, because his strike zone was so much bigger than everybody else's, and he was so gifted. Such tremendous hand strength, such tremendous hand-eye coordination. He could change a game on balls. Miguel Cabrera, remember Miggy? If I remember
in Baltimore
on a pitch
in Baltimore when he intentionally walked him. I was there.
But you see the mindset, right? So what are we trying to lock these kids into with this idea that, we're only going to play by the rules? You're only limiting their potential. And that's the thing. You want kids at an early age to realize their potential. You want them to realize how great they can ultimately be. Of course, you're not going to swing at, pitch outs all day long. But in that situation, he's like, I can reach that and I can do some damage here. And of course, Cabrera did just that. And so it's kind of, stayed in the backs of our minds forever. Is how good these guys are. But that's my point. I don't want him backing off of that in any way, shape, or form. I want him learning what he can and can't do inside the strike zone. Yeah,
that's going to be a topic for another day, because I think we can really have some fun with the swing rate and chasing. Because I think the bottom line and the encouraging thing is Kansas City seems like they're like, Jack, whatever you want to do. You want to pitch, we'll make it work. You want to just let your game grow. But I think I'll kind of leave it on this point, then give you a closing thought as well. What matters is the big leagues. For what we're talking about, the draft analysts and everything, is how you're going to succeed in the big leagues. But it's the Jack McKeon in me coming out, covering Jack all those years, including 03. You allow development. You find out who you are. If you're going to sit around and think a player, because you play at, 20 or 21 after a few years at Florida, put him at 18 or whatever, you haven't started your pro career yet. So this is developed. The couple of years at Florida were like a lower level minor leagues for him. Right. It all develops. You don't just bottle this. Oh, I had a 15% K rate, and I'm going to just carry that up a notch, or a 10% walkway. I'm going to carry that up. It doesn't just go level to level with you.
Right.
You find out who you are. You make you talk about the game of adjustments, or do they believe that doesn't exist? That you can't adjust because the front offices think they're smarter than the game.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah, well, and that's true because the analytics don't lie. And so, if you're going to invest into the analytics, the analytics are true. I mean, these are true numbers. That nobody's arguing that what the information that comes back from them isn't valid, but it has to be used in the right manner to the development of the player. I played with enough guys throughout my career to know that I was more fearful of Vladdy late in a ball game than probably. I'll give you an example. Like the first two guys that come to mind, like Chipper Jones. Chipper was tremendous. If you made a mistake inside the strike zone, but Chipper was also a very disciplined hitter, but he was different. And you get late in a ball game, it was like, okay, well, we can just throw 4 wide ones to Chipper here, and we'll send him down to first base, and he'll take that walk. Where Vladdy, yikes! I mean, seriously, you had to literally do the catcher stand up and do the intentional walk because I remember the meetings. I mean, guys were like, okay, let's pitch him very carefully. And, he'd be pinging a ball off the right field wall. And you're like, what just happened? I thought we were going to pitch him carefully. We're like, well, we did. That ball was 4 inches off the outside part of the plate, and he ripped it off the right field wall. And so you start to understand what I'm talking about here. And so to take that away from players at a very early age, or ding them, or get them thinking that these are things that, this isn't going to work, or, that to me is a little bit silly. And to me, I always find that the best players are the ones that believe so much in themselves and what they can capably do. Yes, they're going to prove to themselves over the course of time what they can and can't do, but you have to let them find that out for themselves. And that's the reality. You can give them the information, allow them to process it, but allow them to discern what I'm capable of doing, what my plate coverage is, how I own the strike zone, and the damage that I can do in those moments. It cannot just be a constant script of telling guys, okay, well, you don't do this well enough, because I'll tell you right now, that kid can play for me any day of the week, and he'll always play for me because I love his mindset. I mean, the guy is the kids say today, not really for me, but he's a dog. I mean, this is a guy that gets after it.
Yep. Let the players. The game's about the players and their creativity and their ability to kind of look. I never thought Ohtani could pull off hitting and pitching. I thought he'd have to be a reliever. I didn't think that you could be a starter and be a Cy Young candidate and an MVP hitter. Yet he proves wrong. So how do we know what these guys can do unless you let them be what they can do? And with that, it's kind of a good way to wrap this up. We went a little longer. We're going to see how this one plays. We only have up to an hour, but we're gonna give you this as much information as we can. Our opinions, like it or not, we know what we're talking about, though. But again, for those tuning in, if you're still listening, we really appreciate you. Please like and subscribe and follow everything. Holly, closing thoughts.
Well, I'm just excited for these young guys. It's been a fun week. Not a lot of baseball games, All-Star game, future game, home run derby, which again caught everybody's attention. I think that was an awful lot of fun to watch. For most of us, I know my house was glued to the TV, probably a little bit more to the home run derby than to the All-Star game. But I'm excited for the talent that's coming back into the sport and the athleticism. I feel like we kind of got into a little bit of a stale. Maybe this had something to do with COVID. 2020 and, the system, but I've got this feeling that we're kind of maybe finally turning the corner, and that athleticism in some of these younger players is really going to start showing up on the big league field. We're going to start to see that exciting brand of baseball that we all fell in love with. And, listen, we love home runs, but it's about singles, doubles, triples, and all the things in between, stolen bases and everything else, and creative offense. And I think that we're kind of getting a wave of players that have been taught that, and we're going to start to see it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the draft was fascinating. I kind of tuned into all 20 rounds. Even boring old me was looking at a blank TV screen with just the MLB Draft 20th round. But I was listening to see if any of our guys were there. I was like doing things on my phone. It was just on, and oh wow, they're from Florida. Oh, they're from South Florida. So I was looking for names that I recognized. But we're going to keep flooding the the channel with all this content. We got a lot of expertise. We appreciate Todd Hollandsworth, former big leaguer, big league announcer, a rookie of the year, and he has so much to bring to the table. If you guys have any questions or want us to answer anything, please, in the comments section, add that as well. We'll get to it. We're growing this. It's going to be baby steps early, but we're growing a nice little podcast here. We're going to get some guests on in the near future, and there's going to be a lot of fun. Holly, let's do this again next week, my friend.
Sounds good, Joe. Love it. Love talking baseball. Love you guys out there. Like Joe said, if you got any questions for us, we'd be more than happy to dissect them on air, live, and certainly we'll take them on. The game is changing. The game's moving in a different direction. I know I've got so many friends around here who, hit me up with questions about, developing young players, what skills should they be working on? What things can they, how do we get more exit velocity, all this other stuff. We're always willing to talk about it, Joe, you and I. So we're around. Shoot us your questions, and we'll shoot you some answers.
We appreciate it. And with that, till we do the Hitting with Holly next week, we'll catch you in your next episode. Thank you.